What were your hopes when you created Trade Stops?
Well, it was definitely based on my personal experience in the markets and seeing a mistake that I was making over and over again, and then assuming that other people were also making the same mistake. I really wanted to create a product that would help people like myself to not make the same mistakes. And also, I really appreciate the newsletter industry, and I think that you can get some great information. But I also saw that there was a need to really supplement that information that you were getting from newsletters by having a system that would help you actually follow through on the strategy and the disciplines that were recommended by the newsletters. So Trade Stops was both a way to help myself and others follow a disciplined investment strategy like trailing stops, and then also to help newsletter subscribers better realize the potential of those products that they were subscribing to.
How important is a trailing stop strategy?
Believe it or not, I don't say that trailing stops are the only answer to the problem that I think most investors face, but I think that you need something like trailing stops. And one of the great things about trailing stops is that they're pretty easy to understand. You know, it's a simple concept of limiting your downside and unlimiting your upside. Most investors, the first lesson they learn is limiting the downside. You have a few big losses and you realize, you know, you're not going to get very far if that happens again. So, on the other hand, unlimiting your upside, a lot of people don't realize the importance of that. You know, you get a quick gain of 80% or 100% and you'll often take that gain off the table. But how do you get a few gains of 200% or 500% or even 1,000% or more? Having a few of those in your lifetime as an investor can make a big difference in your overall success as an investor. So you need something like trailing stops, which achieves the basic goal of limiting your losses and unlimiting your gains. And if you're following some kind of system that does that, great. Trailing stops, as I said, they're easy to understand, and I think most investors can get behind that concept.
How long did it take you, and what was involved in creating smart trailing stops?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you know, I've had it in mind probably since Trade Stops began 10 years ago. So it took a lot of work. I have a research team that helps me pursue different ideas. I had to get a lot of data together to do the back testing. And moreover, I had to get real data from real investors, real buy and sell decisions from real investors, because trailing stops really make a difference when you're dealing with human beings. If you're following a mechanical strategy like a moving average strategy or a trend following strategy, trailing stops can make a difference, but where they make the biggest impact is on the real decisions of people, because people are emotional. So getting that data together to really be able to test some different strategies was important, and it took some time to do that. So I would say that I've been working on it again for probably 6 or 7 years, and it took a lot of time to find a system that I thought really preserved the simplicity that Trade Stops aspires to, because we want to keep it simple for investors. We don't want to be a black box, complicated system. You know, we want to provide a service that investors can understand and feel comfortable with. And so finding a smart trailing stop strategy that really did improve upon the basic 25% trailing stop strategy and was also easy enough to understand and implement, that took a while to find.
I noticed some research tools on your website. How can these tools help investors to make some buying decisions?
Great question. Glad you asked. So, you know, the name Trade Stops implies a certain focus on exit strategies, which is true, and that's really where we started. But I think with some of the tools that we've added recently, that Trade Stops can really help you make both buy decisions and sell decisions. So if you take the Smart Trailing Stop calculator, for example, you put in any stock that you're interested in, say Netflix, and you find out that the Smart Trailing Stop on it is 41%. What does that mean? It means that you might have to endure up to a 41% drawdown of your investment before it has a chance to really take off and realize its potential. Many investors are comfortable with 41%, some aren't. You need to know yourself what you're comfortable with, which stocks, which levels of risk you can endure. because if you're not comfortable in the markets, you're going to make some decisions, you're going to make emotional decisions that you more than likely are going to regret down the road. So on the other hand, a conservative stock like Johnson & Johnson, it's got an 11% smart trailing stop on it right now. You know, that's in a lot of investors' comfort zones. And now if you combine the smart trailing stops with the position sizing calculator, which is also in the research section of Trade Stops, now because you only have to risk 11% on Johnson & Johnson, you can actually invest more of your money on it, invest more of your money in it, and still be taking an equal amount of risk to investing a smaller amount of money in a stock like Netflix. So figuring out what your risk confidence zone is, because you want to be confident in the markets, is very important for investors, and you need to know that information before you make your decisions about which stocks to buy and how much to invest.
Explain the importance of your asset allocation calculator.
Asset allocation is a basic concept of not having all your eggs in one basket, right? So as an investor, you want to be diversified. At least most investors want to be diversified. Some investors really do want to focus on just one area of the market, and that's great. Again, I'm all about knowing what your strategy is and being confident in your strategy and sticking to it. But for most investors, having a balanced portfolio where all your eggs aren't in one basket is very helpful because, again, it's a lot about being able to endure the market moves without getting all caught up emotionally and making decisions which you soon regret. So with asset allocation, if you have a balanced portfolio, then your portfolio isn't as volatile. It doesn't move as sharply with some of the sharp market moves. So that can be a big help in ultimately helping you to stay in for the long haul because you have a balanced portfolio and you know, you're not getting really worked up during some of those more volatile market moves.
Dr. Steve Sugarud is a well-known expert in the area of trailing stops. I recently read in his newsletter that he's converted to your smart trailing stops. How do you feel about that?
You know, that's awesome. I mean, Steve, I've admired Steve for a long time. He's a good friend of mine. I was very moved when he decided to change to the smart trailing stop strategy. But you know, I shouldn't have been surprised because more than anything, Steve is an objective, analytical person who responds to good information that he sees. So when I presented him with the facts about how his performance in True Wealth would have been significantly improved by using the smart trailing stops instead of the basic 25% trailing strategy, he saw that evidence and he converted his newsletter to smart trailing stops. Kudos to him.
If you had to tell investors one thing that would really help protect them in this market, what would it be?
Well, no matter what newsletter you're reading, no matter what strategy you're following, the key thing that every investor needs to understand is that you are part of the equation. One of my favorite quotes is from a book called The Money Game by Adam Smith, and he says, "If you don't know who you are, this is an expensive place to find out." And it's absolutely true. Sometimes it takes 5 years, sometimes it takes 10 years, but you have to find your comfort zone and your confidence as an investor. And when you find that, you'll be in the minority, and you have to find it for yourself. Even if you're reading newsletters, even if you're following somebody else's strategy, you have to find what makes you comfortable and confident as an investor.